Sango was a boy who had no interest in basketball and spent his days reading baseball manga, until one night at a crumbling outdoor court, a stranger humiliated him so badly that he ended up flat on the concrete floor with tears in his eyes. That night, something inside him changed forever. From that moment on, Sango dedicated himself to becoming a defender so relentless that even the legendary Park Byung-chan would one day find himself completely locked down and helpless against him. However, before any of this, at a classroom, a young boy is reading a manga about baseball, and once he is done with it, he asks his friend In-seon if she got the next volume for this. In-seon then tells him that it's the latest volume, so the boy gets bored and asks his professor if he could leave early today as he has a practice match. The boy then quickly leaves the classroom without even giving back the girl her manga, and on his way, he wonders if he could actually read the next volume as it's fun. Later at the court, the boy is practicing his shooting skills all alone while the rest of the team is on the other side playing their practice match. He then continues to throw various moves including a three-pointer shot, but then, he notices a boy in the team running like a maniac and he ended up falling. So, the boy asks the other guy named Junsu if he is okay, but he gets furious and throws the ball straight at the boy. Later that night, the boy sits with another guy from the basketball team and he keep on drinking Coke, so the guy tells him that he is not going to grow even if he drink Coke. However, the boy tells him that he knows someone who drank 1.5 liters of Coke every day and now he's 195 centimeters. Hearing that, the boy says that if he didn't then he would have been 2 meters, but the boy replies that he don't really care because he has stopped getting taller anyways. The guy then asks him if he ever want to do a dunk, but the boy replies that he can do a dunk, but the other guy says that it only happens maybe once or twice after 10 tries. After that, both of them watches players play basketball in the court and the boy wonders if basketball is even fun, to which the other guy replies that he wouldn't even play in the first place if it wasn't. The other guy then calls out Sango by name and asks him whether he has ever played basketball in a place quite like this one before. Sango expresses his concern by pointing out that if anyone catches them playing there, the two of them are going to end up getting in serious trouble. However, the other guy brushes off his worry by explaining that there is really nothing to get caught for, since the lighting in that area is very dim and the poles that are holding up the backboard even look as though they could completely collapse at any given moment if someone accidentally bumped into them. Sango then genuinely asks him whether it is actually fun to play basketball in a rundown place like this, and the guy responds by saying that it absolutely is, because there is not a single person around who would yell at him or scold him for doing something wrong. After that, Sango and the other guy make the decision to leave, but before they can go, one of the boys already on the court calls out to them and asks if either one of them would be willing to play a match against him. Sango ends up stepping forward to take on the challenge, and during the game he manages to display a truly impressive and jaw-dropping level of skill that leaves everyone around him stunned. Right at that moment, two more boys arrive at the court, and it turns out that they are teammates of the boy Sango just played against, and wasting absolutely no time, one of those two boys boldly steps up and directly challenges Sango to a match of his own. After that, the match between them continues, and Sango starts showing weak skills against his opponent, which makes his friend very angry and frustrated. Sango then runs forward and jumps straight toward the basket, trying to throw the ball in for points, but his opponent suddenly slams into him in the air, causing him to lose balance and crash hard onto the ground. The opponent then explains that good defense and good offense must work together at the same time if someone wants to play well. Right after saying that, he throws the ball into the basket with just one hand, making the score 7-3. Everyone watching is shocked because they cannot believe that an elite boy is getting beaten so badly by a regular guy. The opponent then tells Sango that if he were truly an elite, he would have dunked the ball easily, but he also says that it depends on what kind of elite is playing in the game. The opponent then asks Sango if he is around 185 centimeters tall and says that since he is right-handed and always drives and finishes on the right side, he does not even need to worry about Sango taking a long-distance shot. He explains that if he simply blocks Sango on his right side, then the game is basically over because Sango's level as an elite is actually low. Hearing this, Sango becomes very angry, and his friend also feels shocked and upset, wondering how that guy knows that Sango does not really have good shooting skills. The opponent then explains that in street ball, a player usually gets 1 point for scoring inside the line and 2 points for scoring outside the line, and this system is more efficient compared to the normal scoring in official basketball games. He also says that this court follows older standards because the line is about 50 centimeters shorter than the regular measurement, which means he feels much more comfortable playing on it. On top of that, he gives Sango another lesson, saying that he needs to use his brain and think carefully while playing. He tells Taeyang that during the game, it will be really helpful to carefully think about how his opponent is likely to move, what kinds of plays he will probably attempt, and what he most likely will not do. He also explains that Taeyang needs to take time to reflect on his own personal habits on the court and the specific moves that he tends to struggle with, unless the gap between the two players in terms of physical size or overall skill level happens to be extremely large. Following that advice, the match continues, and the opponent suddenly launches the ball from a significant distance and sends it flying directly into the basket, which completely shocks everybody who is standing around watching. Seeing that, a strong feeling comes over him that something is not quite right, because he had clearly noticed the sidestep earlier, and no matter how long or hard he thinks it over, he is fully convinced that there is simply no realistic way for him to easily block an opponent who stands a full 5 centimeters taller than him while remaining positioned inside the line. Sango starts to feel annoyed, but then he calmly hands his uniform to his friend and decides to fully focus on the match instead. After that, Sango decides to do some trash-talking Oswell and asks him if he likes cabbage, so the guy replies he does, to which Sango says that it's good for hair loss. Sango then decides to analyze some things about this guy, knowing that his right-handed shots are good, so he should stick close enough to pressure his shots. Sango tries his best to stick around, but the guy just runs past Sango and throws another ball in the basket. Sango's friend then starts yelling at him, saying that if he keeps doing that then he should just let him plays. Deep down, Sango's friend thinks that the opponent player will keep on attacking, and if this flow continues, the game will be over. The opponent player then tells Sango to get subbed because he is just a stupid player who doesn't even deserve to be called an elite. Hearing that, Sango starts talking trash too and asks the guy if he is planning to go bald, which only makes the opponent even more angry than before. Sango then moves in and sticks very close to him, so close that everyone watching feels surprised, because it looks like the kind of distance where a player can get past the defense with just one quick step, and the defender would not have enough time to react. However, Sango chooses to stay patient and wait for the right moment to block his shot or stop his movement. He knows it is still a gamble, but if he wants to stop the opponent's most dangerous two-point shots, he has to guard him that closely. Later, the new guy named Junsu scolds Sango and asks him how long he has been playing street ball and what he plans to do if he gets hurt while playing there. He also asks if Sango understands how big the impact will be if they lose, since they only have 6 members on the team. Junsu questions why Sango even comes to practice with those guys who look like they just got off a boat. Meanwhile, the other boys in the room decide that they will go out later to buy something to eat, but Junsu overhears them and tells them they should eat as much as they want and try to gain some weight. At the same time, he says they also need to become tougher so they can last longer during the fourth quarter of a game. After that, the boys take Sango along with them to get some food. On the way, everyone starts trash talking about Junsu and complains that all of this happened because Sango went out alone, and they wonder why he would even choose to play on a court right in front of the dorm. One of the boys then tells Sango that it's not a big deal if he plays basketball on the street, but if he really wants to play then he should go to the gym and practice his shooting instead. Sango then tells them that he dunked during the game today and it was also done in one try, and there were some people do better than he thought. Hearing that, Sango's friends asks him if he really got dominated by a local guy, but Sango replies that Junsu came in the middle of the game, and it was over. The next day, Sango finds the same baldy guy he played basketball at the gym, and he turns out to be his coach. The coach then wraps up by reminding everyone to take good care of their bodies, since there is a pandemic going around at the time. It is also at this moment that the coach's name is revealed to be Hyunseong, who had previously played for a team called the Suwon Saint Speedsters. Following that, every member of the team takes a turn introducing themselves to the coach one by one, and when it finally comes around to Sango's turn, he tells the coach that his position on the court is forward. However, the coach pushes a little further by asking him if that is all there is to say about himself and whether he has any kind of particular specialty that sets him apart. Sango begins to feel visibly nervous and starts to struggle with how to respond, so the other guy steps in on his behalf and tells the coach that Sango's specialty happens to be his ears. The coach then signals that the introduction portion is finished and moves on to inform everyone that they have a practice game scheduled against Sangpyeongo the very next day. He then turns to the boys and asks whether any of them have played against that particular team recently, and one of them speaks up to let him know that they actually faced them just the previous week and ended up losing the match. The coach then clarifies that the goal for tomorrow's game is simply to observe and evaluate how much each of them is able to perform and contribute, and because of that, he announces that today's session is going to wrap up with some straightforward conditioning work focused on their overall control and body management. The next day at cafeteria, Sango and the others are eating some food alongside a random boy from their school who keep talking in loud voice. Taesung then arrives and tells the boy to get out of here with scary looking face, and then, he sits with them. Sang-go then realizes that Tae-sung seems to know a lot of people in their school. Tae-sung then asks Sang-go if he is going to escape tonight, but Tae-sung replies that if they lose today, he might get hit by the coach again and do some night workouts. Suddenly, a girl shows up and Tae-sung just looks at her and tells her to leave, so Sang-go asks him if that is his girlfriend, but instead of replying, Tae-sung just leaves the area. Later during a match, Sang-go's team is currently behind in score as compared to the other team, and Junsu is furious at his teammate for not getting the rebound because if he did, the 10 points difference would have been decreased. Seeing that, Sang-go thinks that Junsu is more sensitive than last time, and if they lose again, they will get a mouthful of shouts in the dorm again. He also believes that with a team that cannot even win a simple practice match, making a comeback is almost impossible. In his eyes, Hee-chan may be the fastest player on the team, but he is still too thin for a first-year student and does not look strong enough. However, he thinks Jae-yu is still the best among them, and he says this because of his own experience back in middle school. He remembers that he could not get into a prestigious high school at that time just because he was too short, even though he had skill. He also thinks that Junsu is very good at shooting and can create open shots by himself, while Tae-sang and Dian need proper screens to play better. In his opinion, one of them is just a senior who only knows how to dribble on a streetball court, and the other is someone who did not even make the cut for a football team. Soon after, Junsu tries his hardest to shoot the ball into the basket, but since there is no screen to support him, the shot misses and the ball flies off in another direction. Moreover, Sang-go knows that the basketball team is a total of 6 people and it's a free to replace players, and tired players need to take some breaks from time to time. Furthermore, the coach firmly believes that they are not the kind of team that is simply going to keep losing over and over again, and because of that strong belief, he calls a timeout for his team. He then addresses everyone by telling them that his original intention was just to sit back and observe how things played out today, but that he is starting to feel a noticeable sense of frustration building up inside him, and he makes it clear to everyone that they are going to create an opportunity for a dramatic comeback and turn the whole situation around. The coach then brings up the fact that the third quarter has already begun and points out that his team has not managed to score a single point throughout that entire stretch so far. He goes on to further explain that the attack pattern itself is not necessarily the problem or the wrong approach, but the issue is that no matter how the attack pattern is being executed out on the court, he was able to see through the entire situation and figure out exactly what was happening in just a single moment during practice. After finishing his explanation, the coach proceeds to show the whole team a specific attack pattern that they will be able to effectively use going forward in the game, along with a particular hand signal that the entire team can use to communicate with one another during play. The match continues with Junsu scoring a point by throwing it in the basket. Earlier, the coach told Junsu that the match is going to start soon and he don't think anything's going to change anyways with just talking, and he just have to do what he can and he will handle the rest of it. Back in the present, one of the players from the opposing team manages to get his hands on the ball and leaps up in an attempt to throw it directly into the basket, but the ball ends up bouncing off the rim and rebounding back out. Sang-go's team then immediately charges forward once again, because the coach had previously instructed them that they were going to run the exact same pattern one more time. One of the players on Sang-go's team receives the ball and begins to recall something that the coach had told them earlier, specifically that if the corner shot from before had been successful, then the defender would naturally become more aware of number 31 and would begin to shift his attention in that direction. Keeping that important piece of advice firmly in mind, the player makes the decision to pass the ball over to his teammate instead, who then receives it cleanly and scores a point for the team with relative ease. Following that successful play, the opposing team's coach turns to one of his own players and instructs him to quickly execute something that the two of them had previously planned out together. The opposing coach thinks to himself that there is really no need for any kind of overly complicated tactics or elaborate patterns, because in his view, the most effective form of attack has always been and will always be a fast break. He further thinks to himself that it is completely fine even if they do not manage to get a successful result right away, because they can simply drag the game out in a way that forces the opposing team to burn through all of their stamina and gradually wear them down until they become completely exhausted. He then shifts his gaze over toward the coach of the other team and thinks to himself that the man is essentially just choosing to coach a team that is nothing more than a bunch of rejects. He is fully convinced that it would be incredibly easy for that coach to become known as one of the worst and least respected coaches among all the other teams competing across the entire country. On the other hand, shifting over to Sang-go's side of things, his coach turns to the previous coach of the team and asks him directly about what exactly happened with the team and why they have been performing so poorly. The previous coach then explains the whole situation in detail. He tells him that the school's entrance rate has started to drop a lot because the students keep showing weak and disappointing performances on the court. Since the entrance rate has fallen so much, the team can no longer attract or recruit talented and promising students from nearby middle schools. On top of that, he believes the basketball team is now having a negative effect on the school's average test scores and overall entrance rate. After hearing all of this, the new coach asks him if that means the school is planning to get rid of the basketball team completely. The previous coach tells the other that if they really can't send the seniors to college this year, then this will be the last year for their basketball team. Suddenly, the players come over and inform both of the coaches that Junsu's eyes have been injured during the game. Both coaches immediately turn their attention toward him and begin examining the injury closely, and the previous coach comes to the conclusion that it does not appear to be anything too serious, but he decides that they should still take Junsu to the hospital just to be safe and make absolutely sure that everything is alright. The coach then makes the decision to send Sango out onto the court in Junsu's place, and he finds himself genuinely eager and curious to see exactly how Sango is going to handle himself and perform out there. Earlier, the previous coach had told the new coach that Sango is still only being used for short stretches of time during practice games and that he has not yet developed enough to be considered ready to participate in official competitive games. The previous coach also revealed during that same conversation that Sango had actually started playing basketball at a relatively late age compared to most of the other players. He went on to explain that when Sango first joined the basketball team, every single member of the team took an immediate liking to him and was very enthusiastic about having him around. The previous coach further explained that back then, everyone had assumed and genuinely believed that Sango would grow to easily surpass 6 feet 2 inches in height by the time he reached high school, but as things turned out, he did not grow at all and ended up being somewhat uncoordinated on top of that, which came as a great disappointment to everyone involved. Back in the present, the match continues and Sango manages to get his hands on the ball, but he finds himself feeling far too frightened to even attempt a shot at the basket. So rather than going ahead and shooting directly toward the basket himself, he instead chooses to pass the ball off to one of his teammates, who then takes off running toward the other side of the court and passes it along to another player, who then proceeds to handle the situation in a completely different way than expected. Shortly after that, 3 members of Sango's team begin talking amongst themselves right there on the court and start pointing fingers and placing the blame on one another for everything that has been going wrong during the game. However, the coach notices this behavior and wastes no time in calling them out, pointing out to them that even the players on the other team are the exact same age as them and are high schoolers just like they are, yet those kids are out there putting up an 80-point game and playing at a level that looks completely professional, while Sango's team is out there playing in a way that resembles nothing more than a casual game of handball. Feeling deeply frustrated, the coach storms out of the stadium entirely. On his way out, he unexpectedly runs into the previous coach of the team, and also comes across Junsu, who has clearly just recently had his eye treated. Junsu enters the stadium and he gets quite surprised after looking at the scoreboard. He then tells everyone that a lesson, asking them if they think new freshmen next year are going to carry them out of nowhere. Just then, the previous coach enters the stadium and tells Junsu and Jae-yu to follow him outside. Once they leave, one of the players gets so angry that he smashes the chair with a kick and wonders what's the relationship between Junsu and that quarterfinals. Just then, another boy tells them that Junhyang University, which Junsu aims for, also requires the quarterfinals, and because of that, everyone should just be patient with him and think that he's someone they won't see in a few months. Hearing that, another boy says that if he had done well in the first place, he should have made the quarterfinals already 3 years ago in a better high school, but now that he is here because he's just as bad as them. Outside, the coach is making 4 boys do pull-ups and other various exercises as punishment because they performed exceptionally bad in the tournament. The coach goes on to add that whenever he happens to come by to check on them during the nighttime hours, the only ones he ever sees actually putting in the work and practicing are the seniors, while the younger players are simply busy entertaining themselves with their own personal activities and having fun instead of focusing on improving. The coach also makes it very clear that from that point forward, he expects all of them to show up wearing their proper school uniforms, but Sango speaks up and mentions that he has not yet gotten around to purchasing his school uniform. The coach does not accept that as an excuse and firmly tells him to go out and buy it that very same evening and make sure to wear it correctly from then on. Later that same day, Sango goes ahead and buys his uniform just as he was told, and that night he walks alongside his friends, who casually mention to him that they are not planning on coming to school at all starting from the following week. During that walk, Sango happens to catch sight of the same girl he had previously noticed back in the cafeteria, and he finds himself wondering what exactly is going on between her and Taesung. One of the other guys chimes in and says that there is no way the two of them are dating, because no boy would ever speak to a girl in such a rude and strange manner, to which Sango responds by pointing out that Taesung has always been a weird person to begin with. The very next day, the boys decide to go straight to the source and ask Taesung directly about the situation, and he tells them plainly that they are not dating at all, and that she is actually the same age as him and is his Nuna. The next day, everyone gathers at the gym where a bunch of students are playing with the drums, so another player tells Sango that the clubs are practicing for the school festival. However, the coach informs everyone that today's schedule is physical fitness test, which consists of 50-meter running and 6 kilometers running, and he will rank each one and convert it into a score, and the winner of the overall score will get a prize. Hearing that, everyone wonders what's the prize is going to be, so the coach tells them that he is going to buy them a pair of basketball shoes instead, and then everyone gets excited. Later, the boys does a 50-meter running test in which Hee-chan gets the first position while Jae-yu gets the second position and Taesung gets the third while Sango is at fourth. The coach then tells them that their next test is going to be a max vertical reach in which Taesung gets the first position while Sango is at third. Furthermore, in the 6-kilometer running test, Jae-yu finishes in first place, and this truly shocks the coach because he had believed that Jae-yu was having a harder time than the other students, yet he still managed to defeat everyone and take the top spot in that event. Adding even more surprise to the situation, Sango comes in right after him in second place, which becomes another unexpected outcome that leaves many people feeling amazed and confused. Later, the coach calls the whole group together and announces that the overall first place winner in all the events is Hee-chan, and Hee-chan quickly asks if that means he can choose the most expensive pair of shoes available as his special prize. However, the coach tells him straight up that the promise of a reward was never real to begin with and that it was simply a lie he had told to motivate everyone. The coach then turns to the previous coach and explains that the reason he wanted to put the team through this test in the first place was because the team is filled with kids who have developed rude and problematic attitudes, and in order for him to even begin addressing and correcting those kinds of deeply ingrained habits, he first needed to gain a very clear and precise understanding of exactly what the root of the problem was. After that explanation, the previous coach asks him what his next plan of action is going to be, to which the coach replies confidently that he is going to go out and find the perfect opponent for the team to face against. Later on, Sango and his friend happen to spot the same girl who had previously been seen together with Taesung over at the cheerleading club, and because of that, the two of them make the decision that today is going to be the day they finally go ahead and ask her about it. After practice comes to an end, Sango takes it upon himself to approach the girl on his own while she happens to be in the middle of washing her hands, and he brings up the topic by asking her directly about what kind of relationship she has with Taesung. Without any hesitation whatsoever, the girl immediately responds by telling him straight out that there is absolutely nothing going on between the two of them and that there is no relationship to speak of. The girl leaves and Sango's friends quickly asks him what she said, so he tells them that she said that she doesn't know that either. However, Sango's friend says that there's always something complicated between men and women and it's the lesson of the wise men. Sango then promises himself that he is going to make them like each other. Later, Sango tells Taesung that the girl said there is nothing in between both of them. Hearing that, Taesung freaks out and wonders why he would even ask her that, but Sango says that he can help them, so he should keep it a secret. Just then, the coach shows up and says that she's just his crush, but both of them then freaks out to see the coach. After that, everyone gathers in the stadium where the coach tells them that the concept of this tournament is cramming for the exam. He further says that Sangyang was a strong team last time and any team that has sustainable bench members will be like that. He also tells them that if they don't have any fast break chance when they catch the ball, then they should just change to set offense immediately, and that's why they are going to rely on the pattern play completely. He further explains that if pattern fails, they have to play a two-man game for the rest of the time and one-on-one is their last measure. The coach then hands each of the players a note and instructs them to go ahead and memorize a total of 30 different patterns, telling them that the task is going to be challenging and uncomfortable for them, but he also clarifies that they are not going to end up using all 30 of those patterns and that they will be narrowing things down to only the best ones through the course of their practice games. One of the players then speaks up and asks the coach who exactly it is that they are going to be competing against, and the coach reveals to them that their opponents are going to be the highest level of middle school players in the entire country. Right at that moment, the group of middle schoolers walks onto the field in preparation for the match, and it turns out that they are even shorter in physical stature than any of the players had imagined them to be beforehand. As the match gets underway, Taesung ends up committing a foul by shoving one of the opposing players, and while reflecting on the situation, Taesung begins to recognize that there is a complicated mixture of anxiety over the possibility of losing to a group of middle schoolers and a sense of expectation that they should be able to beat high schoolers. And he realizes that all of these conflicting feelings are being created simply because the gap in the score is turning out to be much smaller than anyone had reasonably anticipated. He also takes notice of the fact that the coach has not been giving out any specific instructions ever since he declared himself the referee for the match, and the whole situation gives off the unsettling feeling as though the coach actually wants them to go ahead and lose. The match continues with Sango's team scoring a point, and the previous coach thinks that Hee-chan and the third graders are overwhelming middle school kids. The ball then gets to the middle schoolers, who tries to score, but Taesung just pushes him away and commits a foul, so the coach scolds him for fouling for no reason. The match then continues with the ball getting rebound to Hee-chan, who then runs straight towards the other side's basket. Instead of shooting himself, he passed the ball to Taesung, who then runs straight towards the other team's player and jumps to throw the ball inside the basket, but he ended up hitting the other player's chest and falls on the ground alongside him. Hee-chan then becomes completely furious at Taesung and demands to know why he felt the need to force the situation when he had already been told to take his time and be patient about it. But Taesung justifies his decision by explaining that he did it because the foul ended up giving them a free throw opportunity. Right at that moment, the coach steps in and informs Taesung that what he committed was indeed a foul, and that he has now accumulated a total of 5 fouls altogether, which means that he is required to be removed from the court immediately. The previous coach then turns toward Sango and tells him to get himself inside the stadium and onto the court as a replacement. At the same time, the previous coach thinks to himself that this is not a good development at all, because if things continue to go in this direction, then either Sango or Junsu is going to have to take up a position under the hoop and deal with the pressure that comes with it. He also takes a moment to observe and acknowledge the fact that even though this is supposed to be a matchup between high schoolers and middle schoolers, the difference in height between the two sides is surprisingly noticeable and significant. The coach then directs his attention toward Dean and tells him that he is going to need to step up and provide a great deal of help and support to those younger kids out on the court. But Dean thinks carefully to himself that he also needs to remain cautious and measured in his approach, because he is already sitting on his third foul and cannot afford to make another careless mistake. After that, the middle schooler gets the ball, who tries to throw in the basket, but Dean pushes him and gets a 4th foul. However, the coach tells Dean that he is out of the match even though he doesn't have exactly 5 fouls, but then, Sango tells Dean that this is actually 5 fouls. The remaining players begin to wonder amongst themselves how they are possibly going to hold their own against a full team of 5 middle schoolers when they only have 4 players left on their side. One of the guys acknowledges that under normal circumstances it would be essentially impossible to pull off, and because of that, he suggests that their best available strategy would be to force the opposing players to take their shots from as far outside as possible and simply hope and pray that those shots do not end up going in. Hee-chan then turns to him and asks what their plan is supposed to be when it comes to the attacking side of things, to which the other guy responds by essentially telling everyone that their best bet at that point is just to pray. The match then resumes with both teams going head-to-head against one another in an intense contested battle. Sango's team has managed to bring their score up to 71 points, while the opposing middle school team is still holding on to a slight lead with a score of 73 points, meaning that only a 2-point difference separates the two sides from one another. The coach then makes the point that being short by even just one player in basketball is equivalent to losing as many as 5 players all at once in soccer, but Dean pushes back on that comparison by pointing out that in soccer, a team would only be forced to forfeit the match if 5 players were each given a red card. The coach then expresses that the team is in a pretty hopeless situation, acknowledging that they had managed to get as far as they did largely because of the lead-off batter of their team carrying them forward, and yet despite all of that, the 4 players who are still remaining out on the court happen to be the 4 smallest players on the entire team. With only 16 seconds remaining on the clock, the ball finds its way to one of Sango's teammates, who takes off sprinting directly toward the basket and manages to throw the ball cleanly inside, which brings the score level and ties the game up completely. Now with only 9 seconds left, everyone on the court is rushing and scrambling with the ball toward the basket in a frantic final push, but the ball ends up getting to one of the middle school players, who immediately attempts to take a shot. However, Sango reacts quickly enough to reach out and knock the ball forcefully right out of the opposing player's hands before the shot can be completed. Despite that last desperate effort from Sango, the match ultimately comes to a close with someone managing to throw the ball back up and into the basket, bringing the game to its final conclusion. It turns out, the person who put the ball inside the basket is none other than middle schoolers, and they managed to win the match. After the match, the coach tells everyone that it's embarrassing that they lost to the middle schoolers, and he asks Taesung why he thinks they lost the match. Taesung tells him that it's because of that ridiculous shot in the end, which is pure luck based, but the coach says that it wouldn't have happened if he hadn't been sent off in the first place and could get a rebound beforehand. However, Taesung fires back by saying that even if the opposing team had 10 members available, it still would not have changed anything even after he was sent off, but the coach quickly cuts him off and points out that the exact same argument applies equally to the middle schoolers as well. He goes on to add that the middle school team's 5 starting players were only 8th graders, and on top of that, 6th and 7th graders who had not even gone through puberty yet were being forced to come out and play on the court. Taesung then tells the coach that he made a really strange and unfair judgment call and that he even made them lose on purpose by the decisions he was making throughout the game, but the coach simply laughs in response and says that he had no idea that Taesung would end up finding yet another excuse, and that this one turned out to be the most creative one he had come up with so far. The coach then tells Taesung directly that he knows kids exactly like him very well, the kind of kids who have absolutely nothing going for them except a head full of pride, and who spend all of their time and energy busying themselves with finding every kind of excuse they can possibly think of rather than simply admitting to themselves that they are not as good as they think they are. He also clarifies that he is willing to bet absolutely everything he has on the fact that his call was completely natural and unbiased, stating with full confidence that he has never once told a lie when it comes to anything related to basketball. The coach then puts forward a proposition to him, telling him that if he can manage to win a one-on-one match against the middle school boy, then he will openly admit that his call has been biased all along, and that Sango will be given the position of referee going forward. The coach then walks over to the middle schooler and asks him whether he would be willing to participate in a 10-minute game, but the middle schooler responds by saying that he is feeling too tired to play at that moment. Sensing an opportunity, the coach then sweetens the deal by telling the middle schooler that he will buy him a brand new pair of basketball shoes if he manages to come out of it with a win. Following that offer, both players take their positions and stand directly across from one another face to face, and Taesung is so completely consumed by fury and wounded pride that he refuses to be the one to make the first move, so the middle schooler goes ahead and initiates the match himself. The middle schooler then charges straight toward the basket with determination and makes an attempt to throw the ball inside, but Taesung seemingly comes out of absolutely nowhere at the last possible second and executes a clean and powerful block that stops the shot completely. The ball gets to Taesung, who just dribbles it around, standing far away from his middle schooler opponent. Hee-chan then yells at Taesung to stop wasting his time on that and just use his strength. Taesung then uses his strength to push the middle schooler, and the middle schooler realizes that he is actually super strong, but one thing he knows for sure is that he's just a beginner. The middle school student suddenly steps to the side, which causes Taesung to lose his balance and fall straight onto the ground, and the game keeps going with Taesung getting overpowered by the younger player, who manages to score 2 points while Taesung still has none at all. The middle schooler's teammates start saying that Sangjung is incredible because even a high school student cannot defeat him, and then some of the other players begin mocking Taesung as well, claiming that he is only a beginner who does not even know how to play the game correctly. After hearing all those insults, Taesung becomes very angry and reacts by committing another foul when he forcefully pushes the opposing player during the match. He then grabs the boy by the collar and angrily tells him to stop behaving in a childish way and focus on continuing the game, but the middle school student becomes furious in response and forcefully knocks Taesung's hand away. After that, Taesung gets completely angry and he starts yelling at the middle schooler, who also yells back, saying he is just a basketball failure and the reason he is in the basketball team is because he failed in high school. At that very moment, the previous coach suddenly walks into the stadium and delivers a sharp slap across Taesung's face, which causes Taesung to kick the ball hard across the court before turning around and walking away. The coach steps in, warning him very clearly that if he takes even one more step toward that door and walks out, then he will never be allowed to set foot on a basketball court and play the game ever again. However, Taesung makes it completely clear that he does not care in the slightest about that warning, continues walking away without looking back, which leaves absolutely everybody who is standing around watching completely shocked. After some time, the rest of the team begins cleaning up the court together, and while they work they talk amongst themselves and wonder why Taesung has gone completely off the grid and is not even bothering to pick up or return his own parents' phone calls. Dian casually tells both Hee-chan and Sango that Taesung is probably going to come crawling back within a few days once he runs out of money to support himself, but Hee-chan feels that something is genuinely different this time around and that Taesung seems really and truly furious in a way that feels more serious than usual, and he begins to seriously wonder what would actually happen to everything if Taesung ended up quitting basketball for good. Sango then tells them that he is also worried about returning to the dorm as they are crushed by the middle schoolers and Taesung created a big problem now. Hee-chan and Dian thinks that they should look in the place like PC room or spa castle that Taesung might go to, but Sango says that he has even better and easier way to find Taesung because of the girl he knows. That night, Taesung gets a text message from a girl named Eun-jae, who says that she wants to have a serious talk with him. He goes to meet her at the park, where he sees that Hee-chan, Sango, and Dian are also there waiting for him, and Hee-chan explains that everyone has been feeling worried about him lately. Taesung becomes angry at Sango and blames him for bringing Eun-jae to that place, but Eun-jae explains that coming there was her own decision, although she admits that Sango had asked her to reach out to Taesung using her phone. Taesung then looks at her and demands to know why she came at all, and she calmly answers that she was just curious about what he had been doing there after he skipped practice the way he did. However, Taesung tells her to mind her own business and stay out of his affairs, but the girl pushes back by asking him why he does not just stop playing basketball altogether if he hates it so much. Taesung then explains himself by saying that he just needs basketball as a way to get into college, and that the moment he gets accepted he is going to quit the sport without looking back. The girl then brings up the fact that he had said earlier that he was going to become a basketball player, questioning how that lines up with what he is saying now. She then goes even further and asks him how he could ever realistically expect to become a professional player when he cannot even manage to beat a group of middle schoolers in a game, which causes Taesung to get genuinely angry and defensive as he tells her that she has never once seen him perform in a real and proper competitive game before and that she has no right to judge him based on what she has seen so far. Taesung then tells her to make sure she comes out to watch the tournament that is happening the following month, because he is going to spend that time preparing himself properly and he fully intends to show her what he is truly capable of, but the girl responds in a cold manner and simply walks away. Afterwards, Sango and Dian takes Taesung to talk to Junsu about it, but he just tells them to get last. In a flashback, the coach told Junsu to learn how he talks to other kids without being rude. The very next day, Sango and the rest of the teammates make the collective decision to bring Taesung directly to the coach so that he can properly apologize for everything that had happened between them. Taesung ended up getting scolded very harshly that day, and as the whole team buckled down and began preparing seriously for the upcoming tournament, the days seemed to fly by incredibly quickly. During that period of preparation, everyone threw themselves into a combination of intense physical training and detailed tactical practice, while the senior players in particular were dedicating a significant portion of their time specifically to weight training, and on this particular day the entire team happens to be in the middle of practicing their shooting. It is around this time that Dian discovers that their coach is actually only 26 years old, and that he was such a remarkably talented player back in his time that he would have been able to significantly reduce the number of turnovers he committed if only he had managed to keep himself from getting too agitated and worked up during games. Right at that moment, the coach walks in and immediately notices that Dian has his phone out and is using it in the middle of practice, so he walks straight over and takes the phone right out of Dian's hands without any hesitation. The coach then turns to Hee-chan and tells him that they should instruct the team captain to collect all of their cell phones and hold on to them together until practice has completely wrapped up for the day, and since Junsu happens to be the captain, everyone should go ahead and hand their phones over to him. Later on, the coach gathers the entire team together and lets them know that the match table for the upcoming tournament has officially been released and announced. He explains that the format of the tournament is going to follow the exact same system as the Soccer World Cup, where 4 teams are placed together in the preliminaries and the top 2 teams from that group advance forward to the next stage. He also goes on to add that the 3 teams they are going to be competing against in their group are Johyang High School, Yanghoon National University, and Wonjong High School. The coach then takes a moment to further explain that Wonjong High School is an exceptionally strong and highly competitive team even when compared to other teams based in Seoul, while the remaining teams in the group are considered to be among the weakest and least experienced, putting them in roughly the same position as Sango's team. The coach clearly explains to everyone that this tournament is a very important and valuable chance for them to fight hard and make it to the quarterfinals, which would be a big achievement for a team in their current condition. After he finishes giving that announcement and explaining the situation to the whole group, the coach quietly calls Junsu over and takes him aside, away from the rest of the players, to speak with him privately. Hee-chan then tells Sango that Junsu's thoughts must be complicated because of Wonjong High, but Sango looks confused and does not understand what he means, so Hee-chan explains that Junsu had actually attended Wonjong High until his first year of high school. A few days later, the long-awaited day of the tournament finally arrives. At the stadium, one of the other team's coaches comes running at Sango's coach and says that it's been a long time since they last met. He then asks the coach why he is wearing a formal suit out of nowhere, but the coach says that he is tired of people underestimating him because of his young age. Sango's coach then asks him what he is doing here, so the guy replies that he is here to see if there are any good students for freshmen next year, as it's better in person than watching it in video. Sango's coach further asks him if he lost some weight or is he working out separately these days, but the guy replies that he has been riding a bike lately, but the coach thinks that it's too scary, so the other guy starts talking nonsense, asking him that with his logic, then is he afraid of swimming because he is afraid of drowning. Hearing that, Sango and the coach walks away. Inside the stadium, coach thinks that basketball industry is very narrow, as he met a senior colleague from his college and can see some referees he once encountered in past games. After that, the coach runs into his high school teacher, and with that the matches for this basketball tournament begins. The coach knows that with this tournament the kids are going to know each other's faces, and if they are the same age then they must have encountered at least 1 or 2 games since elementary school to now. The opponent team member's coach then informs his team that this match must not be lost, as Wonjong High will go up with 3 wins no matter what, so they have to get through Jisung High and Yanghoon High in order to go to quarterfinals with twins and 1 loss. On the other hand, Sango's coach gathers the team together and explains to them that both of the opposing players positioned under the hoop are listed at 195 centimeters, but after seeing them in person he believes that they are actually somewhat smaller than that measurement suggests, and because of that, he makes it very clear that regardless of whether someone is a beginner or a more experienced player, there is absolutely no excuse for losing a rebound against them. He also points out that the opponent's players might appear tall when you take their positions into consideration, but that there is really not all that much to be worried about as long as the team stays careful and keeps a close eye on numbers 22 and 25 specifically, since those 2 players have shootings that are decent enough to cause problems if left unchecked. When everything is taken into account, the coach wraps up by expressing his firm belief that they are more than capable of winning that day's game by a margin of over 20 points, and with that the game gets underway. As things are starting up, Taesung takes a moment to scan across the audience seating area with his eyes in search of the girl, but he is unable to spot her anywhere in the crowd, which leaves him feeling confused and a little frustrated as he wonders to himself why she had spoken the way she did back then if she was not even going to bother showing up. The match then kicks off with Hee-chan getting his hands on the ball right away and quickly putting the first points on the board for the team, and from that point forward Hee-chan and the rest of his teammates continue to build on that momentum and extend their lead over the opposition. The match continues with one of the players of the opposite team running ahead with the ball, and Sango's coach told the team earlier. The coach said that number 22 was just a spot-up shooter until last year, and the reason why he began to handle the ball is because there's no point guard left on the team anymore as the seniors graduated. Hee-chan firmly blocks the opposing player, and then one more teammate quickly joins him, making it almost impossible for the number 22 player to even cross the half line as they keep tightly guarding and blocking his every move. At that moment, one of number 22's teammates calls out from across the court and asks to receive the ball, so number 22 goes ahead and passes it over in his direction, but one of Sango's teammates steps in at just the right moment and intercepts the pass before it can make its way to its intended target. He then smoothly takes possession of the stolen ball and wastes absolutely no time in rushing forward toward the basket before quickly launching it inside and earning yet another point for their team. With that successful play, Jisung High now has a total of 7 points on the board, while Johyang on the other side has still not managed to put up a single point and remains stuck at 0. Johyang's coach stands on the sideline and thinks to himself that he simply cannot believe what he is seeing, finding it completely unbelievable that the opposing team has come out right from the very beginning of the game and chosen to run a man-to-man full-court press strategy against them, especially considering the fact that they only have a single substitute player sitting on the bench available to them, which makes the energy demands of running such an aggressive and physically exhausting defensive strategy seem like an enormous and potentially reckless gamble to be taking this early on in the game. At the same time, Jisung's coach thinks to himself that for the first quarter, the plan is to build up a lead of around 15 points, and after that they will slow things down and comfortably finish out the rest of the game by settling into a half-court style of play built around the patterns they have already prepared and practiced. The coach finds himself really enjoying the satisfying feeling that comes with watching everything fall neatly into place exactly according to the plan he had laid out. Right at that moment, however, one of the Jisung players leaps up to throw yet another ball into the basket, but an opposing player manages to get a hand on the ball and deflect it, and it ends up going inside the basket anyway, which earns the opposing team their first 3 points of the game. Hee-chan then turns to his teammate and tells him enthusiastically that the ankle-breaking move he pulled off was absolutely awesome to watch, but on the other side of things, the opposing team's coach turns to his players with a puzzled look and asks them what exactly the so-called ankle-breaking thing is supposed to mean. One of the players then takes the time to explain it to him, describing it as the kind of situation where a player dribbles so skillfully that the defender ends up falling down as though they had actually broken their own ankle, and that this typically happens either because the defender trips over themselves after failing to overcome the inertia created by a sudden change in direction. After that, the other team takes a timeout, and during that they decide to get number 21 in the match, and the coach tells him to do exactly in 12 minutes. Seeing that, Sango's coach decides to tell the team about him, but turns out there is no record on him anywhere. Seeing that, the coach gets frustrated and thinks that he has checked every single video from last year and this year, and it's definitely the first time seeing this face. The coach then asks the players if any of them know him, but none of them seems to know anything about him, and the coach realizes that they might have replaced him to play it safe and he could be good at dribbling. After that, the match begins with the new player showing amazing performance by cutting through everything, but Hee-chan appears in front of him to block him. However, he completely confuses Hee-chan and manages to easily score some points by throwing the ball inside the basket. Seeing that, the coach thinks to himself that the zigzag step is a pretty essential and widely used move among young players these days, and that it is considered a very common technique, but that executing it while running at full speed and cutting very sharply and suddenly right in front of a defender is something that goes far beyond simply being able to chase and follow the movement. The coach further thinks to himself that while this player might know how to pull off a few tricks here and there, he must have some kind of noticeable weakness hiding somewhere, since he is not one of the starting members of the team, and that weakness could be something like being a poor defender when put under real pressure. The ball then makes its way over to Hee-chan, who attempts to burst past the new player and get by him, but the new player handles it with surprising ease and manages to strip the ball cleanly away from Hee-chan before taking off and running straight toward the basket without hesitation. Witnessing that play unfold, the previous coach immediately gets the feeling that something is not quite right about what he just saw, because Hee-chan's running speed is genuinely one of the very best among all high school players at his level, and even senior guards who are older and more developed have been known to struggle to keep up with how fast Hee-chan can move. Because of this, the coach begins thinking that the new player looks about 5 centimeters taller than Hee-chan and probably weighs over 20 kilograms more than him, yet he somehow moves at almost the exact same speed, which should not normally be possible for someone with that size difference. The coach also feels that this player is not ordinary at all, and what seems even stranger to him is that he knows absolutely nothing about the boy, even though he has been coaching high school basketball for the past 3 years. At the same time, 2 boys sitting in the audience start talking about the newcomer, with one saying that his skills and movements are clearly at a very high school level, but the other boy explains that someone who has only been involved in the high school basketball scene for 2 or 3 years might not understand, because the new player is actually not a high school student. The opponent player uses a thumb sign that makes Sango's coach think that they are still using the same sign. He tells the previous coach that they are making it easier to remember strategies. The coach also says that he just copied his method to make his own, and that thumb sign was called the top strategy that he used when he was in high school, but the other coach asks him if they could prepare for it now since he remembered the strategy, but the coach replies that knowing itself doesn't really matter in this strategy. Earlier, the other team's coach told the team that to win the match, they sometimes need to aim for the opponent's weakness, and if their matchup feels much weaker than them, then they should just raise their thumb, saying him the top. Back in present, the opponent team's coach thinks that there's is one rule that does not exist in adults games but exists in middle and high schools games, and it is requesting man-to-man defense in the first and second quarter. Furthermore, there are a lot of different ways to use man-to-man defense, but the simplest among them all is the difference in skill level with the matchup. During the match, the new player makes an attempt to throw the ball into the basket, and despite one of Sango's teammates doing everything they can to stop him, the ball still ends up going inside and counting as a score. Witnessing that play from the audience seats, 2 people sitting together begin discussing the situation, with one of them thinking out loud that Ji-sung-hai really needs to start making some changes to how they are defending. However, the other person responds by saying that there is really nothing that Ji-sung-hai can realistically do about it at this point in time, since they are not even in a position to switch up their defensive strategy due to the regulations that are currently in place, and on top of that there is not a single substitute available on their bench who has what it takes to stop number 21 from doing whatever he wants out there. He goes on to add that he went ahead and searched through Sango's records beforehand but was completely unable to find anything on him, and in his view that can only mean one thing, which is that Sango is simply not skilled or experienced enough to have participated in any official games worth noting. He further adds that it does not matter what anyone tries to do or what kind of strategy anyone attempts to use, because none of it is going to be enough to give them any kind of fighting chance against the opposing players. On the other hand, shifting over to Sango's coach, he finds himself stuck on one particular thing that he still cannot wrap his head around at all, which is the fact that there is absolutely no logical reason why number 21 should not have been out there playing as a starter from the very beginning. Furthermore, Sango's coach thinks that there is no reason why number 21 should not come out as a starter because seeing he's only using isolation since he joined the game, he don't think he is going to play that long. Because of that, the coach thinks to himself that the new player must have some kind of weakness hiding somewhere that they just have not been able to identify and exploit yet. The match then continues with Hee-chan going up against the new player once again, and as he faces him, Hee-chan thinks to himself that at the end of the day this new player is just another high school student the same age as the rest of them, which means that stopping him is not something that is completely out of the question. He also notices that the new player has been consistently going to the left side from the very beginning of the game, so he figures that there is a reasonable chance he might switch things up and go to the right side this time around. Sure enough, the new player once again pulls out the same zigzag technique he has been using, and just as Hee-chan had anticipated and predicted, he shifts his movement toward the right side this time. Hee-chan then moves in and attempts to block him from getting through, but the new player simply uses his physical strength to push Hee-chan aside without much effort at all and launches the ball straight toward the basket. Watching that play from the sideline, the coach remarks that Hee-chan actually did a perfectly fine job of cutting off and blocking the drive in direction, but that he simply got physically overpowered and pushed out of the way due to the significant difference in body weight between the two of them. Sango then randomly comments that whenever he looks at Hee-chan's thin and bony calves, he feels a strange urge to deliver a low kick to them, which causes the coach to look over at Sango with a deeply unsettled expression, thinking to himself that Sango is genuinely kind of creepy. Furthermore, the coach thinks that it became harder to expect Hee-chan to score after number 21 entered the court, and it's not a big deal since Hee-chan wasn't the leading scorer on this team. He thinks that the real problem is defense and the following pace for score is too fast and they can't change the marking with Junsu as they could have dealt with number 21's speed until now because it was Hee-chan, but it's not worth trying with Junsu's sidestep speed. On the other hand, Hee-chan gets so desperate to block the new player that when he cuts through, he just commits a foul by pushing him. As it turns out, the foul that was called is not just counted as Hee-chan's personal foul but is actually recorded as a team foul as well, which comes as a genuine surprise to pretty much everyone who is watching. During the free throw that follows, the opposing team successfully converts and adds more points to their own score, and with that the first quarter comes to a close. Looking at how things played out, the two boys sitting in the audience come to the conclusion that the new player was so incredibly impactful that he single-handedly managed to close the point gap all on his own, bringing it down from what had been a 15-point difference all the way to just 4 points. One of the guys acknowledges that number 21 is undeniably talented and impressive, but he also points out that the Johyung coach who made the decision to build an entire strategy around one player's individual skill set is not someone with an ordinary level of confidence and nerves either. However, the other guy then shifts the conversation by pointing out that Ji Sung-hai's bench has been remarkably and worryingly quiet throughout all of this, even as the situation on the court has been getting progressively worse, but his companion responds by saying that the reason for that silence is simply because there is nothing more left for them to say, and that the team actually performed pretty well all things considered given that it has only been about a month since the coaching change happened. Meanwhile, on the court side of things, the coach pulls Sango aside and tells him that he is going to be sending him in as a replacement for Hee-chan, which catches virtually everyone around them completely off guard. The coach tells Sango that if he enter the court, the first thing is he shouldn't hesitate and be confident when he get a chance to shoot because they don't know that he is bad at shooting and they want to abandon him if he show them confidence in shooting. He strictly tells Sango to pretend like it is something that happens all the time, and he shouldn't make any expressions or even any ceremonies. In addition to that, he should also block number 21, and if he can stop number 21 on his own, then it's the same as he is pulling two people's weight. However, Sango replies that he is so sure about this, but the coach asks him if he remembered the first lesson when they met, which was to use his head to think. After that, the time is up and everyone gets to the court including Junsu, who is not happy about Sango playing the match. Hee-chan tells Sango that number 21 uses drive basically, but he used a three-pointer right after he moved a bit far away for the defense last time and he never miss any throws, but he finds an empty spot and passes right away. However, Sango thinks to himself that if the new player is really as dominant and well-rounded as he appears to be, then there is a real possibility that he might not actually have any meaningful weakness to speak of at all. The match then resumes with number 21 charging ahead with the ball in his hands, and he makes an attempt to throw it into the basket, but one of the players from the opposing team manages to get in his way and challenge him. Sango observes and thinks to himself that number 21 managed to get through the challenge with surprisingly little effort, and that he did it without even needing to rely on any kind of trick or deceptive move, simply using his raw speed alone to get past the defender. Sango also notices that watching him move around the court up close like this makes him look significantly faster than he appeared when Sango was observing him from the bench earlier. The previous coach then leans over and tells the new coach that he had made Sango practice his shooting every single day during the week leading up to the competition, but that despite all of that dedicated effort and repetition, Sango still did not manage to show a whole lot of improvement in that area. On top of that, the previous coach also thinks to himself that Heechan's shooting is not particularly impressive either, but that it does not come anywhere close to being as bad as Sango's shooting, which is at a level where opponents feel completely comfortable ignoring and abandoning him on that side of the ball. The new coach, however, thinks to himself that even though Sango's shooting leaves a lot to be desired, he more than makes up for it with his defensive abilities, which are genuinely stronger and more reliable. The match then continues with the ball being passed over to Sango, who takes it and launches it directly toward the basket. However, the ball doesn't go inside the basket and just rebounds, so Dian catches it immediately, but number 21 steals the ball from him. The ball once again gets to Sango. That annoys Junsu, but Sango doesn't hesitate and throws the ball once again, and this time it goes inside the basket. Sango thinks that his condition might be bad today because it usually gets in without even hitting nets. The opponent team players then talks among themselves on how one player should stay close to Sango, but the player says that there is no need for that as he just threw one ball, but the guy replies that he is saying as the best shooter on their team and Sango is a shooter. The guy also mentions that he got replaced with the intention of strengthening their attack and seeing that it would be difficult to face his skills. At the benches, one of the guys asks the other why was Heechan replaced and wonders if it's because he had a lot of fouls, but the guy replies that there is only one high schooler or none in this country who can stop number 21. The match then continues with number 21 scoring another point for the team, and Sango thinks that it's hard for him to stop him now. At the same time, the coach also thinks to himself that if things continue going in this direction, it is really not all that different from the situation back when Heechan was the one marking number 21. But the one positive thing he can take away from the current situation is that they are now making better use of the larger court space available to them. The ball then makes its way over to Dian, who quickly launches it toward the basket and successfully scores, and with that basket Jisung Hai brings their total up to 28 points while Jo Hyung Hai remains behind at 23 points. On the other side of things, Sango finds himself deep in his own thoughts, thinking that if the coach had actually wanted him to make mistakes and cause accidents at every single step he took out there, then he would have ended up being more confident than absolutely anyone else in the entire world, because that is something he feels he could truly excel at. He also admits to himself that he feels a genuine sense of jealousy toward players like number 21, who are so clearly and naturally superior to everyone else around them, but at the same time a strong and burning desire begins to rise up inside him as he realizes that he wants nothing more than to prove to everybody watching that he is not useless and that he has something real to contribute. Sango then makes a move and manages to get his hands on the ball and knock it away from number 21, but the referee steps in and calls it as a foul, and yet right at that very moment something clicks inside Sango's mind as he realizes with growing confidence that he just might actually be capable of stopping and blocking number 21 after all. Sango thinks that there is a slight difference in skills and he believes that number 21 is going to use the same move once again. However, number 21 just pushes Sango heavily and tries to break through and quickly scores, but the referee says that it's an offensive foul. Everyone then gathers around and jokingly asks Sango whether he drank some kind of special juice the previous day because he seems to be incredibly lucky throughout the whole game, but Sango pushes back on that and says that if the others had stepped in to help him out a little sooner, he would have been able to stop number 21 at half the pace that it actually took him to do so. On the other side of things, the coach turns to the previous coach and reminds him that he had already told him before that Sango is genuinely talented in certain specific areas, and that he first got that feeling when he initially ran into Sango at a local court and spent some time watching him. He explains that what stood out to him right away was the fact that Sango has a natural and deeply ingrained habit of carefully and closely observing the people around him and picking up on details that most others would completely overlook. He also points out that number 21 happens to be left-handed, which is something that even his own teammates had not picked up on or paid attention to, and yet Sango had already noticed and figured it out in less than 10 minutes from the moment the two of them first met on the court. The match then picks back up and continues, with Sango managing to steal the ball cleanly away from number 21, after which it quickly gets passed along to another player who wastes no time in scoring points for the team. Number 21 thinks to himself that Sango is not nearly as fast as Hee-chan is, but that for some reason he finds it significantly harder and more frustrating to get past Sango than it has been to get past anyone else out there. Earlier, Sango had pulled Dian and Taesung aside and told them that if number 21 manages to get past him and makes his way under the goal, he will take care of their marks and cover for them as quickly as he possibly can, so when that moment comes they should just go ahead and jump with everything they have got. Back in the present, number 21 does indeed manage to get past Sango and drives his way forward, and just as he leaps up into the air to throw the ball into the basket, Taesung comes in at exactly the right moment and successfully knocks the ball right out of his hands. Following that, the opposing team calls a timeout, and during that break their coach pulls number 21 aside and tells him that the amount of time he went over in this game is going to be subtracted from the timeout allowance in the next game. The coach also tells him that it is a real shame that they were not able to turn the situation around and pull off a comeback, but that he still performed well enough overall and should not be too hard on himself about it. On the other hand, Sango's coach turns to Sango and asks him directly how he managed to figure out a way to stop someone as dominant as number 21, and Sango responds by revealing to everyone that number 21 has been playing through a leg injury the entire time. Hearing that, the coach and the other guy ask Sango about it, so he explains that when number 21 started driving into the left and gets blocked, another defender comes to help, and in that moment, number 21 uses spin or variety of different combination attacks. However, if he starts driving into the right and gets blocked, he just stops and jump shoots or try to get a free throw after intentionally ramming to the defense, and that's the reason Sango has been cutting his left side. The other guy then turns to Sango and asks him what exactly a leg injury has to do with any of this, and also raises the question of what they would do if the player turns out to actually be left-handed after all, but Sango responds with full certainty and tells him that he is absolutely sure that number 21 is right-handed and there is no doubt about it. The coach then quickly jumps in and explains to everyone that because of the injury, number 21 is simply not able to change directions the way a healthy player normally would, and that turning from left to right puts a significantly larger amount of stress and strain on a person's left leg, while turning from right to left puts that same kind of stress on the right leg instead. The coach then follows that explanation up by pointing out to Sango that the reason why number 21's right side drive-in always appears so much simpler and more straightforward compared to his other moves is almost certainly because the injury happens to be located in his right leg, which forces him to unconsciously compensate and adjust his movements in a way that protects it. However, despite all of that making logical sense on the surface, the coach thinks to himself that something about the whole situation still feels a little strange, because if number 21 is truly limited and stuck with only one reliable strategy due to his injury, then the smarter and more sensible thing to do would be to simply try switching to a completely different strategy altogether rather than continuing to rely on the same approach. Sango then points out that it looks like number 21 himself is not even consciously aware of the fact that he has been instinctively protecting and favoring his right leg throughout the entire game without realizing it. Hearing that, Hee-chan jumps in with a burst of confidence and declares that he can block number 21 now that he knows this, but the other players immediately shoot that idea down by telling Hee-chan plainly that he is only going to end up getting beaten up and overpowered if he tries. Sango then notices that number 21 is in the process of being substituted out of the game right at that moment, and the coach quickly recognizes the opportunity and tells everyone that this is their chance to go ahead and widen the point gap between the two teams once again. The match then resumes, and on the opposing side, the other team's coach pulls number 21 aside and tells him that just by watching the way he has been moving out there on the court, it is plainly obvious that his movements have become noticeably fatigued and worn down compared to how he started. As he looks at number 21, the coach finds himself drifting back to a memory, recalling that the very first time he ever saw number 21 playing on this particular court was 6 years ago. On that day, number 21, whose real name is Byung-chan, suffered a serious injury, and that injury was somewhat of an inevitable outcome given the circumstances surrounding it. By the end of that same year, Byung-chan had made the difficult decision to quit playing basketball altogether, as the injury he sustained was severe enough to potentially interfere with even basic daily life activities going forward into the future. After a series of disputes and confrontations that followed, Byung Middle School agreed to allow Byung-chan to transfer to a different school, but only on the strict condition that he sign and agree to a very specific contract before doing so. As it turns out, the specific terms that had been written into the contract included transferring to a school that did not have a basketball team and agreeing to never play basketball again for as long as the contract remained in effect. However, the reasoning behind those particular terms might have been rooted in the fact that Byung Middle School was genuinely afraid that Byung-chan would eventually recover and come back to become a serious and threatening opponent against them in the future. At the time the contract was presented to them, Byung-chan and his family went ahead and accepted the terms without putting a great deal of thought or consideration into it, largely because they were under the impression at that point that he would never realistically be able to play basketball again anyway. However, a year later when Byung-chan became a high school student, both the surgery he had undergone and the long rehabilitation process that followed turned out to be far more successful than anyone had originally anticipated or expected, which left him with a complicated and deeply unresolved set of feelings toward basketball that he could not simply push aside and ignore. As fate would have it, during the very same year that Byung-chan entered high school, a basketball club happened to be created at his new school at just the right moment, and without hesitating Byung-chan made the decision to start playing basketball again from that very day forward, stepping back onto the court despite everything that had happened to him. In addition to that, the hiatus didn't matter much to him, and that kid was diligent and liked basketball more than anyone else. But the time when the coach was about to send Byung-chan to a tournament, there was an unexpected problem blocking the way forward. Furthermore, Byung-chan was not qualified for the competition, and Byung Middle School submitted Byung-chan's contract to the Basketball Association, and somehow that contract, which was made in a hurry like mere child's play, cancelled Byung-chan's player registration. One night, the coach sat Byung-chan down and told him directly that he was going to find a way to solve the contract situation by whatever means necessary, and that because of that Byung-chan should simply put all of his energy and focus into his work and not worry about anything else. The coach also told him that having taught and guided so many students over the course of his career, he has developed the ability to look at a young player and see just how far they are going to go in the future. Furthermore, the coach went on to tell Byung-chan that when he looks at him specifically, what he sees is the future of someone who is going to become a National Guard, and that on top of that he is probably going to be very popular with the people around him because of his good looks, all while earning a solid and respectable salary. Hearing all of that, Byung-chan becomes completely filled with excitement and enthusiasm, but the coach then brings the tone back down and tells him seriously to never give up no matter what happens, because he genuinely believes that Byung-chan is going to become the greatest masterpiece of his entire basketball coaching career. Following that, Byung-chan successfully gained the qualification he needed to participate in the competition, and after the situation was handled by threatening Byung with the possibility of the whole story being reported to the media, Byung-chan's very first high school tournament, which had been filled with so many unexpected twists and turns along the way, ultimately fell short and failed to make it all the way to the finals. Back in the present, the two people sitting in the audience spot a man wearing glasses sitting somewhere else in the crowd and immediately begin to piece together the reason why Byung-chan has suddenly reappeared on the scene after everything that happened. After the game, Byung-chan goes up to the coach and asks him to let him play a little longer, explaining that he will sit out the next game for however long he played today. He tries to make his case by promising to balance his playing time, but the coach questions whether Byung-chan has already forgotten about the agreement they made, pointing out that 12 minutes have already passed. The coach also warns him that even if he goes back out onto the court, it is going to be really hard for him to score the way he did before, especially with the current state of his knee. Byung-chan refuses to accept this and goes back and forth with the coach in a heated argument that keeps building up, until he finally snaps and shouts out that he is nothing but a crippled failure, which immediately grabs the attention of everyone in the stadium. The coach, clearly frustrated and embarrassed by the outburst, scolds Byung-chan and tells him to go sit on the bench and stop making a scene. Byung-chan, instead of sitting on the bench, lowers himself down onto the ground and speaks up again, telling the coach that he is old enough and mature enough to know how to express himself. He goes on to say that for everyone else watching, this game is probably just another ordinary preliminary match that happens all the time, but for him it means so much more because he feels like his chances of getting into college depend on it, and he also strongly feels that his teammates want him back out there on the court with them. The coach then turns to Byung-chan and asks him directly how long he is planning to stay out on the court and keep playing, to which Byung-chan simply shifts his gaze over toward the scoreboard and gives his answer by saying that he is going to keep playing for as long as it takes until they win. Following that exchange, Byung-chan makes his way back onto the court and enters alongside Sango, who is also being brought in as a substitution at the exact same time, and everybody watching begins to wonder and murmur amongst themselves about who Sango even is and why he is being given the significant honor of being substituted in at the very same time as someone as notable as Byung-chan. Once the play gets going, Sango once again manages to get in the way and successfully intercepts one of Byung-chan's shot attempts, causing the ball to rebound off and land in Dian's hands. Watching that, Hee-chan turns to the coach and points out that ever since his middle school days all the way up until right now, Sango has spent pretty much every single day carefully watching and absorbing everything that other players around him were doing, and that this deeply ingrained habit of careful observation is exactly the reason why he is able to perform at such a surprisingly high and effective level today. Shortly after that, Byung-chan ends up being called for an offensive foul as a result of his increasingly aggressive style of play on the court, and as he processes what just happened he comes to the clear realization that every single bit of this difficulty he is experiencing out there is being caused entirely by Sango. Byung-chan realizes that Sango has figured out that his moves on the right side are pretty predictable, and that Sango has actually been pushing him toward the right for the past few minutes, knowing that his right knee is the problem. Byung-chan tries to switch things up and move to the other side, but he still ends up missing the ball anyway. Sango, on his end, feels a little uncomfortable about the fact that he is basically taking advantage of Byung-chan's leg injury to get the upper hand. Watching all of this play out, the men sitting in the audience notice that even though zone defense has become an option now that the second half is going, Sango is still choosing to stick with man-to-man marking on Byung-chan, which tells them that he is a really solid defensive player. One of the men then brings up the fact that Byung-chan keeps getting stopped by that same strategy over and over again but points out that Jo Hyung's coach is still pushing Byung-chan to be the one to break through and fix the situation. The other man responds by suggesting that this is probably because the other 4 players on Jo Hyung's side are simply not strong enough to handle it, and he adds that it seems like both coaches are pretty confident and believe that their own player is going to be the one to come out on top in this matchup. Byung-chan is now starting to feel pain in his knee and he remembers a flashback where the coach asked him why do he always run to the basket when he catch the ball, but he replies that that is what he is best at and also has the highest chance. However, the coach stops him and tells him that if he keeps relying on the same move over and over again, there is going to come a day when someone figures it out and shuts him down completely. The coach also takes a moment to remind Byung-chan that he really needs to stop underestimating the people he goes up against, because if he keeps going back to the same attack every single time, his opponents are eventually going to catch on and get comfortable dealing with it, which is why he needs to start mixing things up and throwing out a variety of different moves to keep his opponents guessing and make things genuinely difficult for them. Byung-chan then asks the coach what the right move would have been in the situation they were just talking about, but the coach gets visibly irritated and snaps at him for not remembering, going on to explain that the second of the 3 most important things in basketball is the ability to think and read the game properly. Back in the present, Byung-chan turns to Sango and tells him straight up that he is pretty good and then admits that he is going to give up on trying to beat him in a one-on-one situation because it is just not going to happen anymore. After that, Byung-chan shifts his approach and sets a screen, and by working together with his teammate instead of trying to do everything on his own, he manages to get the ball through and score a point. After that, one of the men watching brings up the fact that over at Jisung High, Junsu is the one who has managed to hit 4 out of 5 three-pointer attempts so far and is clearly in the best shape out of anyone on the court, but the thing is that Byung-chan happens to be the one matched up directly against him. After that, Byung-chan pushes through and manages to score another point, and just like that the gap between the 2 teams has closed all the way down to only 6 points. The match then keeps going with Junsu getting his hands on the ball and stepping up to attempt a shot, but the ball comes right back off the rim and rebounds without going in. The coach stands on the sideline and thinks to himself that Byung-chan's condition is clearly getting worse as the game goes on, and he was able to see it pretty clearly after hearing what Sango had to say, because after that last block attempt, Byung-chan came down and landed in a really unnatural way with only his left foot taking all of the impact. Because of that, the coach is starting to think that they really need to go ahead and pull him out of the game before something seriously bad ends up happening to him out there. Sango then turns to Byung-chan and tells him to slow down and take it easy because it is pretty obvious just from looking at him that he is dealing with a whole lot of pain right now. Byung-chan's response to that is to just burst out laughing and tell him that he genuinely does not care about any of it. He then takes off and blows right past everyone on the court and make a hard drive toward the basket trying to put up a score, but Sango is right there waiting for him and goes up and swats the shot away clean. Sango then steps up and goes to put the ball up toward the basket himself, but Byung-chan reaches in and strips the ball right out of his hands and leaps up to throw it in, and Sango responds by shoving him, but the ball ends up going through the basket anyway. Right at that moment, Byung-chan's knee starts flaring up with even more pain than before because he accidentally came down hard on his right knee during the whole thing, and at that exact moment Jisung's coach turns to the opposing coach and asks him straight up whether he is really not planning on pulling Byung-chan out, because from where he is standing his condition does not look good at all. By this point it is pretty clear to everyone watching that Byung-chan is out there limping around the court, and it is becoming more and more obvious that both the coach and the player have completely lost their sense of reason when it comes to this situation. The coach then stands there and thinks to himself that Byung-chan has basically turned into nothing more than a disruptor at this point, someone who cannot even run properly anymore, and meanwhile Jisung takes full advantage of the chaos and manages to put some more points up on the board for their side. With less than a minute left on the clock, Byung-chan starts to panic even more than he already was, and he begins running around the court with the ball trying to force something to happen. The coach then quickly calls out to Sang-go from the sideline and tells him not to let Byung-chan's injury throw him off or make him go soft on him. Sang-go then manages to get up and block the shot cleanly and gets his hands on the ball, but just as he is about to make a move with it, Byung-chan reaches in out of nowhere and snatches the ball right out of his grip, which leaves pretty much everyone in the building completely stunned. After that, both of them go at it and fight hard trying to gain possession of the ball, but Byung-chan ends up coming away with it first because his height gives him just enough of an edge to get to it before Sang-go can. Right at that moment, one of Byung-chan's teammates rushes over to him and urgently lets him know that they are running dangerously low on time, and that if they do not make their move right now then they are not going to get another chance to put up an attack before everything runs out. Seeing that, Sang-go wonders why he is not tired yet, as aside from leg injury, even after doing tons of one-on-one he still doesn't have a sign of exhaustion. Moreover, he thinks that he's not threatening as before because seeing his legs hurt more than before, he won't be able to move properly, whether left or right, but instead of going to any direction, Byung-chan tries to do a three-pointer shot. The ball then goes straight inside the basket and then, they get a free throw which they also scores, so now there is only 1 point gap. The ball then gets to Jae-yu, who wonders which pattern should he use, but he thinks that Byung-chan can't run properly right now, so it should be focused on Jun-soo. Taking advantage of the 7-second difference between the shot clock and the game clock, Jae-yu makes the quick decision not to leave too much time sitting on the shot clock and kicks off the pattern right in the nick of time. Byung-chan pushes himself as hard as he possibly can and tries to chase after the ball as the final countdown starts ticking away, but his injury is so bad at this point that he cannot even manage to run the way he normally would. The ball then finds its way to Jun-soo, who lines up and fires it straight toward the basket with everything he has got, but Byung-chan absolutely refuses to give up and digs deep and takes off straight toward it, and in a moment that leaves everyone in the building completely stunned, he manages to get up and steal the ball right out of the air before it can reach the basket. Byung-chan then takes off running straight toward the basket with the ball in his hands, and while he is doing that his mind starts racing and he tries to remember what the coach had told him about the single most important thing in basketball. But the only thing that is coming to him clearly in that moment is the one thing the coach told him about not getting himself hurt out there on the court. Byung-chan then pushes forward and gets closer and closer to the basket, but Sang-go suddenly appears right in front of him blocking his path, so Byung-chan instinctively pulls off a quick reflexive move to dodge around him, which sends Sang-go stumbling and falling down to the ground, and Byung-chan releases the ball and throws it up toward the basket right as the final second ticks all the way down to 0. With that, the game comes to an end with Byung-chan's team coming out on top and claiming the win, while Jisung-hae walks away with yet another loss just like they are used to. However, rather than breaking out into any kind of celebration after the final buzzer, the entire team is too stunned and concerned to even think about that, because right in front of everyone it has become very clear that Byung-chan's physical condition has taken a serious turn for the worse and is far more alarming than anyone had realized during the game. After the match wraps up, one of the guys goes up to the coach and tells him that they could have actually won if they had just committed to putting Byung-chan in a double team from the very start instead of giving up 3-pointers, and he goes on to question why the coach has had such a strong dislike for using double teams for such a long time. The coach fires back and explains that if they had gone with a double team, the opposing players would have torn them apart with their 3-point shooting and the final score would have ended up being even worse than it already was. Later that evening, everyone makes their way out to the van to head home, and Jun-soo is clearly in an irritated mood, but the previous coach notices and calls him out by asking him whether he really thinks he is the only one feeling that way right now. On the ride back, the coach addresses the whole team and tells them that they need to put in a lot more work on their shooting during practice, because while winning is obviously important, shooters tend to hold up better over time than other players and do not beat their bodies up quite as much. The following day, one of the players comes to visit Jun-soo at the hospital, where Jun-soo has been lying awake unable to get any sleep, and the guy tells him straight up that he could not sleep either because he was absolutely frustrated out of his mind after everything that went down the day before. He also says that they could have won if they didn't have number 21 and Sang-go was pretty good yesterday. He also says that Taesung also did well, but Jun-soo says that he don't remember anything that Taesung did yesterday. However, the guy responds by telling Junsu that there is really no way they are going to be able to advance to the quarterfinals in this particular tournament, because Johyung Hai is going to go ahead and beat Yanghoon Hai even without their number 21, so their energy is better spent focusing on the next tournament instead. The guy then shifts the conversation and asks Junsu whether his family is planning to come out and watch today's game, but Junsu just tells him that both his mom and dad are too busy to make it. Junsu then turns it around and asks the same question back, and the guy answers that his parents are not coming out either, explaining that things have not exactly been going well lately on the court and he really does not want to put them through the embarrassment of watching that. Later that same day, everyone starts making their way into the stadium venue and gathering together, but while he is there, Junsu ends up crossing paths with a player from the opposing team who clearly seems to recognize him from somewhere. The guy immediately gets friendly and starts talking to Junsu, letting him know that Youngjun had recently earned a spot in the starting lineup, but Junsu just stands there and does not really react to any of it. After that, the guy tells Junsu that ever since he went ahead and transferred schools, it really seems like he has turned into a completely different and colder person. Junsu snaps at them and walks away without another word, which leaves the boys standing there thinking to themselves that his attitude has somehow managed to get even worse than it already was before. Later on during practice, the opposing team's Youngjun shows off some really impressive skills that immediately catch everyone off guard, and both Heechan and Sango end up staring in surprise at what they are seeing. Heechan turns to Sango and tells him that Youngjun's jumping ability is absolutely insane, and that even though the guy looks like he just rolled out of the shower, he can still get up in the air like that without any trouble. Sango, however, thinks to himself that Taesung is probably capable of pulling off dunks just like that as well, but Taesung is quick to shut that down and says that there is no way he can do that since he never even bothered to practice it before. Heechan then jumps in and tells him that he does not really need to practice something like that, because all he has to do is jump up and just throw his whole body into it. Taesung's eyes then drift over and land on another player who is walking around wearing a national team t-shirt, and just the sight of it is enough to make Taesung seriously want to go over there and punch him. Heechan then spots Jae-suk standing nearby and recognizes him right away as the younger brother of Hyung-sik, who plays for the National Guard. Just then, Jisung's coach meets up with the other team's coach, and he gets all nervous and starts talking all kinds of nonsense. He says that he is jealous that Wonjung has 2 kids over 2 meters tall and there are more than half of the schools with no 2-meter kids, and he heard that kids these days are taller than before, but he don't know why he can't see any of them around him. However, the other team's coach says that the average height of Korean teenagers peaked 3 years ago and is no smaller in millimeters, and the reason for this is the time for outdoor activities and exercise has disappeared due to smartphone use. Last night, the coach asked Junsu to tell him about everything he know of Wonjung High School, but Junsu replies that he can tell who's good or bad, but he don't know much about tactics either. He also mentions that all the coaches have changed since he transferred, but the coach says that he wants to know about the players because he already knows tactics. Back in the present, Wonjung High suddenly breaks out into loud cheering from their side, which makes the coach wonder why they are even bothering to bring a whole cheering team out to something like a preliminary match. He then turns to his players and tells them not to let any of that get to their heads and to just go out there and do exactly what they have been practicing. He tells them that the moment they get their hands on the ball, they need to check right away if there is any chance for a fast break, and if there is no opening for one, then they need to call for a set pattern instead. The coach also shares a piece of good news with them, letting them know that one of the starting players on the other side has gone down with an injury. After that, the players make their way onto the court, and the coach stands there thinking to himself that the seniors on the team are probably finally starting to feel the wear and tear catching up to them. Deep down, the coach already knows that this is most likely a game they are going to end up losing, but what he is really hoping for is that when it is all over, the final score does not show too wide of a gap between the two teams. Team Jisung decides to do their very own chant Oswell, like if the captain says Jeong then the rest of the team says the best on earth. Heechan then tells everyone to put their hands together, but the other players start getting shy about it. Now, the match between Jisung and Wonjung High and the ball gets to Jae-yu, who breaks through everyone. The opposite team's coach thinks that Jae-yu is the responsible for most of the team's scores with Junsu, and even plays the role of the main ball handler, which means he's the one who holds the ball the longest in Jisung High. He further thinks that counting this year's official match records, he has mere turnover stats of 2.4 per game and his handling is definitely good. On top of that, the coach is fully confident that they have the best point guard and shooter in all of high school basketball on their side, and that player is none other than Jae-suk. Shortly after, Jae-suk makes his move and throws the ball directly at the basket trying to score, but it ends up bouncing right back off the rim. Hee-chan watches and says that it would have been so incredibly cool if that shot had gone in, and then turns to Junsu and tells him that if he ever gets that same feeling of confidence about a shot, he should go ahead and try something like that too. Thinking back to the night before, Junsu had sat down with the coach and brought up Youngjun, telling him that there is not much to worry about when it comes to him other than the fact that he can jump pretty high. The coach pushed back on that and told Junsu that Youngjun actually has a pretty solid 3-point percentage, and that even though he does not attempt them all that often, his success rate in the last tournament was sitting at around 35%. Junsu responded by saying that if he had been just as selective and picky about only going for shots he was absolutely sure about, he is confident that his own percentage could easily be up at 45% or even higher than that. Back in present, Junsu runs with the ball and thinks that he doesn't know how Youngjun became a starter. Junsu then sends the ball flying straight into the basket. Hee-chan immediately turns to Junsu and tells him that he is in incredibly good shape today and that he has been hitting 100% of his shots so far. At the same time, two men sitting in the audience are talking about how there is only a 4-point gap as the first quarter comes to a close. The guy sitting next to him brings up the fact that Wonjung-hae has pulled in some of the best shooters from all across the country, but even with all that talent, he does not think that even Jae-suk is really performing at his best today. The man goes on to think to himself that it is really only a matter of time before the gap starts growing fast once the kids on Jisung-hae begin to run out of stamina. On the other side of things, Hee-chan is already getting really pumped up and turns to Sango and asks him what if they actually go ahead and win this whole match today. Sango responds by saying that Junsu is actually in a much more fired up mood than he usually is, and that it is all because they are playing against a school that Junsu used to attend. Hee-chan goes up to the coach and asks him about the results of the match between Jo Hyung-hae and Yang Hoon-hae, pointing out that the mood around them seems pretty good, but the coach tells him that he did not watch that game at all. The coach goes on to say that no matter how that game turned out, nothing about their own situation has changed, and that they should just stay focused on keeping their score up and not worry about anything else. After that, the players on the other team get themselves together and ready to go, and one of them speaks up and tells the rest of the group that if their shooting is not falling the way they want it to, they can always shift the momentum back in their favor by tightening up their defense instead. He also tells them that they need to move quickly to stretch the gap even further and make sure there is enough time for the rest of the teammates to get some playing time in as well. The match then gets going again with players from both sides rushing toward the ball, and Junsu makes an attempt to throw the ball at the basket, but it comes right back off the rim. The ball then finds its way to one of the players on the opposing team, who wastes no time and goes for a fast break 3-point shot, and the ball goes clean through the basket without any trouble. After that, the opposing team begins putting a lot of pressure on Jisung-hae's players and successfully steals the ball while it is on its way to one of their players. One of the Wonjung players goes ahead and throws the ball toward the basket, but it bounces right back off, and another Wonjung player is quick enough to grab the rebound and pass it over to one of his teammates. That player then looks up at the clock and sees that there are only 8 seconds remaining, so he immediately speaks up and tells the referee that the shot clock was never properly reset. While that is going on, the coach walks over to have a word with the referee about the situation, but the clock just keeps on ticking the whole time without anyone stopping it. At that moment, the player decides to go ahead and hurl the ball straight at the basket anyway, and this ends up making the entire Jisung-hae side completely furious about the whole thing. Jisung's coach then gathers the team and tells them that the gap between the two sides is only going to get wider if they do not get their heads together and start playing as a unit. After that, another player sends the ball flying toward the basket, but it rebounds once again, and a different player manages to catch it, only to accidentally step right on top of Taesung's foot in the process. After that happens, Hee-chan and the rest of the team quickly rush over to Taesung to check on him and ask if he is okay, but Taesung tells them he is fine and that the other guy actually looks like he is in more pain than him. The other players on the opposing team immediately go to their coach and tell him that their player is not in any condition to keep playing, so the coach decides to pull him out and put in a replacement. One of the opposing team members then turns to Taesung and tells him that he should not be undercutting other people's feet like that, and that if he is not talented enough to win the right way, he should at least have the basic manners to play clean. Taesung does not take that well at all and starts cursing him out for saying something so out of line. After everything settles down, the match picks back up with a 10-point gap still sitting between the two teams, and Junsu is locked in with the mindset that he is absolutely not going to let Youngjun get the better of him. The ball ends up in the hands of one of the opposing team's players, so Junsu takes off running straight after him to try and get it back, but right as the guy leaps into the air to throw the ball toward the basket, Junsu reaches out and grabs his hand, which causes the opposing player to come crashing down onto the ground. Seeing that, Everyone starts thinking that Jisung High peoples are playing so dirty, and another player then tells Junsu that it was too dangerous, but Junsu apologizes for that. Another player then says that Junsu has become the same as those hayseeds as he transferred, but Junsu gets angry to hear that, so Junsu gets furious, but the other guy tells him to calm down. One of the players on the opposing team says that Jisung High is clearly weaker than Yanghoon High and that it figures that kids like them would play dirty when they are not good enough to win any other way. His teammate tells him to calm down and not let it get to him, since getting emotional is only going to mess up their game. Youngjin then speaks up and says that if the other team is going to play dirty with them, then they are going to go right ahead and do the same thing back. Youngjin then walks over to Junsu and asks him how many three-pointer shots he has actually made so far, though in his head he figures it has only been one, and while he had been genuinely curious about how much Junsu has grown as a player, it is not looking like he has improved all that much. Youngjin goes on to say that Junsu probably has no energy left in him since he is out there eating nothing but grass soups. Junsu fires back and calls him nothing but a jumping fox. He then takes off running straight toward the other player, and the moment he gets the ball in his hands, he quickly launches a three-pointer shot, thinking to himself that Youngjin really must think he is some kind of idiot, especially since he is out here playing against Jinsu High like it is nothing. In a flashback, Junsu is sitting in his classroom trying to study when two bullies walk in and look around the room demanding to know who runs things around there. Everyone in the class immediately turns and looks over at Junsu without saying a word, so the bullies zero in on him and tell him to get up on his feet. The bullies then head out of the classroom and tell Junsu to show up at the gym after school, warning him that if he does not come, he is going to regret it. After they leave, another student leans over to Junsu and asks him what exactly he did to get on their radar, wondering out loud if he got caught for the incident where he supposedly hit a 6th grader the week before, and saying that he is pretty sure those guys are basically like the cops of the school. Later on, that same bully rounds up a bunch of kids, Junsu included, and takes them all out to an internet cafe. He then lays it out for them and tells them that if they go ahead and join the basketball team, they can come hang out at places like this whenever they want, and on top of that, they will not even have to bother doing their summer reading assignments. One of the students then asks him if they are going to become basketball players when they grow up, so the guy replies that they are, and athletes are so cool as they are popular and make a lot of money. He then gives everyone a piece of papers and tells them that he would need an autograph of their parents by tomorrow, and everyone agrees to him except for Junsu, who says that his mom said playing sports is hard. Hearing that, the guy asks him if he thinks that playing sports is the only hard thing in this world and everything has difficulties. However, Junsu says that basketball is not fun and he don't even know how to play, and he would have thought about it if it was a football. After that, the guy decides to pull up a video for Junsu that he thinks will get him genuinely interested in basketball. As Junsu watches it, he asks why the team that is losing is chasing after the other team so aggressively, and the guy explains that they are using a foul strategy in order to cut down on wasted time, and that the whole point is to intentionally send the other team to the free throw line and then go after the rebound because they simply do not have enough time left to play it any other way. It turns out that the video is actually a legendary moment where one player manages to score 13 points in about 30 seconds, pulling off 4 three-pointers in that stretch and completely flipping the entire game around on its head. Not long after watching that, Junsu goes ahead and joins a basketball team, and around that same time, talented middle school players from all over the country start making their way to that same program, with pretty much everyone having their sights set on eventually making it to Seoul. However, things do not end up going all that well for Junsu on the team, because the coach ends up deciding to recommend that some of them look into transferring elsewhere. Faced with that situation, Junsu makes the call to transfer to a different school, while Youngjin chooses to stay right where he is. So, the 4 of them who started playing basketball together in elementary school were separated like this as Young Min, who used to be concerned about not growing tall, decided to quit basketball. In addition to that, Hoon, who was not athletic at all, quit basketball for unknown reason, and Junsu decided to transfer while Youngjung decided to stay at Wonjung High. However, the school that Junsu ended up deciding to transfer to was Jisung High School, and at the time, Jisung High was not exactly a powerhouse team by any means. The substitutes were pretty thin and the overall roster was lacking, but there was a moment where the freshman center and point guard at Jisung High put up 50 points between the two of them and came incredibly close to pulling off a win against one of the strongest high schools around. Jisung was not able to participate in the tournament for a full year because of transfer regulations, but that did not really bother Junsu all that much, because the way he saw it, once that 1-year restriction was lifted, he would be able to step in as an outside shooter alongside those two, and he genuinely believed that the 3 of them together could put together a pretty solid run by the time his senior year rolled around. Junsu was completely convinced that his future was right there at that school, but the guy who had transferred to Seoul shortly after turned out to be way too talented to stick around a place like that for long, and once he was gone, everything started falling apart and going in the wrong direction. Jae-yu was left out there grinding and struggling all on his own, but the results and performances were still disappointing no matter how hard he worked, and then the following year, not a single promising freshman ended up enrolling at the school. Back in the present, Junsu manages to get the ball into the basket, but the referee immediately blows the whistle and rules that the point does not count because of an illegal screen. Junsu turns to Taesung right away and snaps at him, demanding to know why he is setting a screen when Junsu had already gotten past him. Taesung defends himself and explains that the coach had told him to run a 2-on-2 if the original pattern did not work out. Junsu is not having any of it and completely loses his cool, telling Taesung to just get out of his way if he does not even know how to properly play basketball. The coach then erupts from the sideline and goes straight at Junsu, asking him whether he had not been clearly told to keep his temper under control no matter what happens during the game. The match then gets going again with Youngjin getting his hands on the ball and setting his sights on going head-to-head with Junsu in a one-on-one situation. Youngjin then steps back and launches a three-pointer shot that goes clean through the basket, and he does not hold back at all as he turns around and taunts Junsu right to his face. The game continues with Junsu picking up the ball and sending a pass over to Taesung, but Taesung finds himself completely trapped with no room to move or get a clean shot off, and before anything can be done about it, the clock runs all the way down to 0. Jae-yu turns to Taesung and tells him that he should have just gone ahead and thrown the ball himself when he was running low on time, but Taesung fires back and says that he simply did not have the time to keep an eye on the clock while everything was happening. Jae-yu then shifts his attention over to Junsu and thinks to himself that Junsu is completely losing it out there and is not listening to anything he says, and that absolutely nothing seems to be going the way it is supposed to today. After that, Jae-yu takes a moment to size up the opposing team's Jae-suk and comes to the conclusion that while Jae-suk is a pretty strong attacker, he is not all that fast and his defense is not really anything to be too worried about either. Jae-yu then puts in everything he has and does his best to get the upper hand on Jae-suk, and ends up pulling off a clean jumper shot that goes straight through the basket without touching the rim. Watching all of this unfold from the stands, two people sitting in the audience talk amongst themselves and agree that Jisung Hai clearly has a few tricks up their sleeve, but they also notice that their coach does not exactly look happy on the sideline. The other person thinks about it for a second and figures that the coach is probably upset because some of the players may have gone back on something they had promised him beforehand. The match then picks back up with Jae-yu making an attempt to steal the ball from one of the opposing team's players, but they manage to fake him out completely and one of them goes ahead and scores a point. Hee-chan then finds himself wondering out loud how in the world Jae-suk is able to throw the ball so effortlessly and make it look that easy every single time. Taesung just shrugs it off and says that some people are simply born with it, the same way some players cannot even manage to hit 50% of their free throws no matter how hard they try. Jae-suk, who apparently catches what they are saying, speaks up and tells them not to go ahead and write off his hard work like that, because he goes out there and throws 1,810 shots every single day without fail. On the other side, the opposing team's coach is watching the game closely and thinks to himself that while Jae-yu is a decent enough guard and does his job well, he is simply not on the same level as their own Jae-suk, and on top of that, his biggest weakness is the fact that he is extremely short compared to everyone else out on the court. The coach continues thinking to himself that it really does not matter what kind of abilities Jae-yu brings to the table, and that even if he happens to be one of the best shooters out there, there is one thing that he simply cannot get around and that is defense. The coach thinks about how passes that go up over his head are completely out of his reach, and how his lightweight body puts him at a serious disadvantage whenever things get physical out on the court. The only thing that is actually working in his favor right now is the fact that his hands are quick enough to pick the ball right out of other players' hands, and looking at this year's official records, he has been averaging around 3.4 steals per game, which is a pretty solid number on its own. However, the coach does not think that number actually reflects his overall defensive ability in any meaningful way, because going for all those steal attempts ends up creating openings that the opposing team takes full advantage of and turns into easy scoring opportunities on their end. The second quarter comes to an end and the coach immediately turns to the team and asks them what he told them to do whenever the set pattern breaks down, and the team quickly responds all together that he told them to run a two-man game. He then singles out Junsu and demands to know why he keeps skipping over everything they worked on and just going straight into one-on-one situations on his own. He does not stop there either and goes on to scold the rest of the team as well, turning to Hee-chan and asking him if he should just pack up and go home since none of them seem to be listening to a single word he says. The coach then asks the whole group straight up whether they actually think they are good at basketball when they cannot even manage to execute a simple 2-on-1 properly. On the other side of the court, the opposing team's coach watches all of this play out and thinks to himself that Jisung's coach is really just taking out his frustration on his players for no good reason. He then turns to his own team and tells them that they did a solid job out there and lets them know that he is planning to make some substitutions depending on how things look once they get into the middle of the third quarter. After that, the third quarter gets underway with Junsu stepping up and attempting a three-pointer, but the ball does not go through the basket and instead rebounds right into the hands of one of the opposing team's players. Taesung tries his best to go after him, but he just clashes and gets a fourth foul instead. Some boys in the other side then start booing at Taesung and the other players to distract them, so the coach tells the referee to keep the kids quiet. Hee-chan then thinks that with a bad atmosphere Junsu's free throw is not working today. He then tells Junsu that he shouldn't worry about the past shots and just keep throwing as the shooting condition will definitely be back if he keep trying. However, the opposing team's coach is not really the type to go for vague and abstract ways of describing players, and when he looks over Junsu's records, he notices right away that there is a pretty dramatic difference in his three-pointer success rate from one game to the next, almost like a roller coaster going up and down with no real consistency. He also thinks to himself that Junsu is just an incredibly streaky player, where on a good day he might go 5 for 5 without breaking a sweat, but on a bad day he could just as easily go 0 for 5 and look like a completely different player out there. He believes that when you take all of those individual game records and stack them together, that is how you end up with an overall three-pointer success rate for any shooter. On top of that, he is convinced that what people call a shooting condition or a hot streak is really nothing more than an error that comes from not having a large enough sample size, and that the whole idea of being in or out of a rhythm is just an illusion that those small sample errors end up creating in people's minds. Junsu then steps up and tries to put up another shot, but it does not go in, and everyone watching comes to the same conclusion that today is just not his day. The ball then finds its way to one of the opposing team's players, who leaps incredibly high to get a shot off, but Taesung comes out of nowhere and shoves him, picking up a foul in the process and getting himself thrown out of the game. Taesung then storms straight toward the referee and demands to know why a foul was called when he clearly only made contact with the ball and nothing else, but Junsu quickly steps in and tells Taesung to back off and walk away, assuring him that he is going to be the one to handle the conversation with the referee instead. At that moment, one of the players from the opposing team throws a curse in Taesung's direction and casually walks away as though nothing happened, which causes Taesung to absolutely lose his composure and fly into a rage. He then tries to punch straight toward the opposing player with the clear intention of attacking him, but Dian manages to get in between them just in time and holds Taesung back before anything serious can happen. The coach then makes the quick decision to pull Taesung out of the game and send Sango in as his replacement, and everybody watching finds themselves desperately curious to see how Sango is going to handle the pressure of the situation he is being thrown into. Dian then turns to Sango and asks him directly whether his injured backbone and tricep muscle have fully recovered and healed up completely, to which Sango casually replies that they are sitting at around 60% healed, and he follows that up by adding with a slight grin that 60% happens to be a number that is actually lower than his three-point shooting percentage. The match then gets back underway with Sango pulling down a rebound, and seeing that, the coach calls out to him and tells him to get himself over to the backcourt rather than focusing on rebounding. However, Sango thinks to himself that rebounding is not actually where his real specialty lies, and that his true strength is in three-point shots instead. Wonjung then continues to perform at an absolutely outstanding level, pushing their score all the way up to 62 points while Jisung is still sitting far behind at only 37 points. Watching the growing gap from the crowd, one of the men in the audience remarks that there has been a very noticeable and significant difference in the height matchups ever since Taesung was taken out of the game, which has clearly been working against Jisung in a big way. The ball then finds its way over to Sango, and a Wonjung player begins to make a move toward him, but another one of the Wonjung players steps in and stops his teammate, telling him not to bother because Sango is not capable of shooting the ball at any meaningful level and therefore does not pose any real threat worth worrying about. Hearing that and feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him, Sango takes a deep breath and makes a conscious decision to push all of the noise and doubt out of his mind and stay as calm as possible, before making up his mind to go ahead and shoot the ball in exactly the same way and with exactly the same mindset that he had done successfully before. Earlier, the coach had pulled Youngjin aside and told him that whenever Sango steps out onto the court, he should just go ahead and let him shoot without putting too much pressure on him. Back in the present, Sango puts up a shot but it does not go in and bounces right off the rim, just like the coach had expected it to. The opposing team's coach was not able to pull together any real records on Sango since he had not participated in any official games, but he managed to pick up a few things from watching the footage of the match against Johyung Hai, and one thing that stood out very clearly was that Sango put up a really impressive defensive performance against the one and only Park Byung-chan. On top of that, the coach also noticed that compared to number 13, Sango is not as capable when it comes to scoring directly, but what he does really well is stretch the court out by showing that he can hit from long range, and that kind of threat alone makes Sango a much better fit as an overall piece within the team system. After that, the opposing team's coach turns to a few of his players on the sideline and tells them to start getting themselves warmed up and ready because they are going to be heading out onto the court soon. The ball then finds its way to Dian, who digs in and shows a surprising amount of strength going up against one of the opposing players, but right in the middle of it all, Youngjun leans over to Junsu and tells him that he is going to get back to him very soon. Hearing that, Junsu gets furious and tells Dian to just pass the ball to him, but Youngjun manages to intercept the ball, saying if he just yells at his teammates like that, then the younger players are left with no choice but to pass the ball back to him. After that, Youngjun charges straight toward the basket with the ball in his possession, and the other players call out to Sango and tell him to get back to the backcourt and go one-on-one with Youngjun. However, Youngjun pays absolutely no attention to Sango whatsoever and simply leaps straight up toward the basket and throws the ball cleanly inside without any hesitation. With the force of that play, Sango ends up falling hard onto the ground while everyone else around the court erupts into cheering for Youngjun, including his own parents who are sitting in the audience and celebrating enthusiastically along with everybody else. After that, one of the guys sitting in the audience leans toward Jisung's coach and tells him directly that he should stop putting on what looks like a desperate and embarrassing show just to try and close the score gap, and that he should be focusing on making number 4 stand out and shine instead, pointing out that there will always be another opportunity to get a quarterfinal record in the next tournament down the line. He also takes a moment to remind the coach that he is going up against Wonjung High School here, and that there are a significant number of people who have come out specifically to watch this game and are paying close attention to everything that is happening. The guy then goes even further and challenges the coach by asking him whether he truly believes that a good coach is defined by how many wins they can rack up, before answering his own question by stating that a genuinely good coach is actually someone who successfully sends their kids off to good colleges and sets them up for a bright future. The match ends with Jisung Hai losing the match as usual, and everyone thinks that it was a 40-point difference, and there is a reason why Wonjung Hai got second place in the last tournament, as their playing style was very trendy. They further think that the reason why the director from Pro is different is because of his amazing skills, and instead, Jisung Hai just memorized several simple patterns and repeated them, and even that didn't work. On the other hand, another team's coach runs into Jisung's coach and asks him if teaching kids is not an easy job. Jisung's coach tells him that he thought all he had to do was teach basketball, but things were different, but the other coach asks him if he is just a basketball coach to the kids. He further asks him that how many of them do he think will be a pro later, and explains that if he teaches 10 students then it's only 1 or 2. On top of all that, the old coach points out that most of those kids are living in a dorm away from their parents, and that the teachers do not really pay them much attention when they are sitting in the classroom, which means that he is pretty much the only real adult presence they have around them on a daily basis. The way he sees it, if he does not step up and look out for them and something ends up going seriously wrong, that is the kind of thing that could weigh on him and cause him pain for the rest of his life. Before walking out, the old coach leaves him with one last thought and tells him to take some time and really think hard about what it is he actually wants to teach these kids and what kind of impact he wants to have on them. Meanwhile, Taesung gathers everyone around and lets them know that Johyung Hai ended up coming out on top in their match earlier that day, explaining that he figured that out by overhearing some people who were talking about it right beside him. Hee-chan just cannot seem to process the fact that the Yanghoon players got completely steamrolled by Johyung Hai like that, and on top of that, he is pretty doubtful that number 21 was even out there on the court participating in that game at all. Taesung then brings up the fact that Junsu is probably going to turn around and get mad at all of them for messing up the game, even though not a single one of his three-pointer shots managed to find the bottom of the net the whole time. Just at that moment, Taesung's eyes land on the girl he likes as she walks out of the stadium, and the expression on her face does not exactly look like she is in a great mood from what he can tell. Shortly after that, Junsu shows up and immediately calls Taesung out, saying that he apparently has all the time in the world to hang around girls but cannot be bothered to show up to practice when it actually matters, and then goes on to curse him out without holding anything back. Taesung is not about to just stand there and take it though, and he holds his ground and stares Junsu down, and just as he winds up and tries to throw a punch, the coach steps right in between them and ends up taking the hit instead. Right before he goes down, the coach looks at both of them and tells them that they really need to be good to each other. Some days later, Jisung Hai is going against Yanghoon Hai in the third game and they were ahead in the beginning despite the chaotic atmosphere, but Jae-yu injured his ankle in the middle of the game. Despite it not being a serious injury, Jae-yu couldn't play for the rest of the game, so the team eventually had to allow them to turn the tables and finish the tournament with 3 losses. However, the coach decided to stick around at the venue to catch the rest of the game, while Jae-yu chose to head back home to rest up and take care of his injury, and Taesung also decided that he would be commuting from home for the time being. After that, the team is given a short break, and during that time Taesung and the others decide to hang around and watch their school's cheerleading team perform, which happens to include the girl that Taesung has a crush on. Eun-jae steps up and introduces herself to everyone, letting them know that their team does not just handle cheerleading and dance routines but also puts together their own original choreography and cover dances as well. The moment she finishes talking, some random guy in the crowd immediately speaks up and asks for her phone number right on the spot, which clearly catches Taesung completely off guard and throws him for a loop. After that, the cheerleading team gets their performance going, and right in the middle of it all Hee-chan leans over to Taesung and points out that Eun-jae actually came out to watch the game for his sake, and that she did that even though she was already in the middle of getting ready and preparing for the upcoming school festival on top of everything else she had going on. Taesung then decides to head out, and on his way he comes across 2 boys saying all kinds of disgusting and disrespectful things about Eun-jae, so Taesung deliberately walks right into one of them and bumps him hard enough to draw everyone's attention, but then slips out of the place quickly before anything else can happen. The following day, Taesung does not show up to practice at all, and the previous coach is visibly fed up and frustrated because of it. He sits down with the new coach and vents about how Taesung has a habit of skipping out on practice whenever he feels like it, cannot keep his emotions in check during games, and is now on top of all those starting physical confrontations with Jun-soo. Later that night, Taesung and Eun-jae find themselves on a bus together when out of nowhere a group of dangerous people ambush everyone on board and tell them that if any one of them can pull off a dunk shot then they will go ahead and leave everybody alone. Without hesitating for even a second, Taesung steps up and throws down a dunk shot right then and there, and just like that he manages to get Eun-jae out of danger. It then turns out that the whole thing was nothing more than a dream, and Taesung snaps awake and decides to head outside to the court. Out there, Taesung crosses paths with an older man who seems to recognize him from somewhere, and right around that same moment the coach also shows up carrying a basketball in his hands. After that, the coach and Taesung head out to the court together and the coach starts working with him and trying to walk him through some of the basics when it comes to shooting form. While they are at it, the coach looks down and notices that Taesung's toenails are in really bad shape, so he asks him what happened and why they are all beaten up like that. Taesung explains that one of his toenails got completely ripped off after someone stepped on his foot, but the coach tells him that he really should have spoken up and said something about it way earlier than this. Taesung just shrugs it off though and says that he honestly does not feel any pain when he is actually out there in the middle of a game, and that there is not really a whole lot anyone can do about it at this point anyway. On top of that, Taesung turns around and asks the coach how he even managed to find this place and end up coming out here, and the coach responds by saying that he just came outside to shoot around and happened to spot him, which Taesung immediately sees right through and recognizes as a pretty obvious lie. The coach then asks Taesung what he thinks the difference is between this outdoor court and the gym back at school, and Taesung thinks about it for a second before answering that it is a huge difference, because out here there is nobody standing around judging him or sizing up his skills, and everyone actually wants him on their team. Hearing this, the coach jumps straight in and asks Taesung directly about his crush, but Taesung immediately gets all awkward about the whole thing. The coach then starts listing off the characteristics of the girl that Taesung likes one by one, which makes Taesung even more embarrassed than he already was, and the coach wraps it up by telling him that he has a crush on basketball just as much as he does on her. Before heading out, the coach tells Taesung to go ahead and pack up all his things and get himself back to the dorm right away. The following day, the previous coach brings up the fact that he feels like it might still be a little too soon to have brought Taesung back to the dorm, but the coach brushes that concern aside and says that there is not going to be any more trouble from here on out because he himself is also going to be staying there with them. The coach makes the decision to move in and live alongside the rest of the team at the dorm, and one of the first things he notices when he gets there is that the only thing sitting inside the refrigerator is fungus, which leads him to ask the boys straight up whether they never touch any of the food their parents send them and just survive entirely off of ramen. Meanwhile, on a completely different note, Jae-yu sits down with his mom and tells her that he is seriously thinking about quitting basketball for good, but his mom simply tells him to go ahead and do whatever he feels is right for himself. How long do you think it will take for Jisunghai to finally turn things around and become a real team? Comment, Jisung, if you'd like a part 2 of this series. Make sure to like and subscribe the channel for more sports manhwa recaps.